Hello, my friend, and welcome. Tonight, there is nowhere else you need to be. The world outside can wait. Your lists, your worries, the small fires that burned through your day, let them cool now. Let them settle like embers in a hearth that no longer needs tending. You are here, and that is enough. You are warm, and that is everything. And if you will allow me, I would like to take you somewhere soft, somewhere green, somewhere that smells of rain on soil, and the first shy blossoms of a season that always comes back, no matter how long the winter seemed. Let us go to spring together. Spring does not arrive the way we sometimes imagine it. It does not throw open the doors and flood the world with light all at once. It is far more patient than that, far more tender. It begins in the dark, in the very deep of the earth, weeks before you or I would notice anything at all. Far beneath the frost line, beneath the heavy silence of January ground, something is already stirring. The roots of the willow trees are already reaching. The sleeping seeds are beginning their slow, dreaming stretch, the way you might curl and uncurl your fingers in the first moments of waking, not yet fully conscious, just beginning to feel that the world is there. This is how spring begins, not with fanfare, but with the smallest possible whisper. The snowdrops know it first. They are the quiet prophets of the turning year, and they push their way through frozen ground with a determination that seems almost impossible for something so fragile and so white. If you were to watch them in time-lapse, you would see those pale, bowed heads pressing upward through soil that is still cold to the touch, still locked in the memory of winter. And yet they come. They always come. The snowdrop does not wait for warmth. It is, in a way, the bravest flower in the world, though it would never tell you so. It simply bends its little white head and gets on with the extraordinary business of living. There is a word in the Japanese language, a word that exists precisely for this feeling, this awareness of the slow arrival of beauty. The word is aware, which you might loosely translate as a bittersweet appreciation of the transience of things. The cherry blossoms, the sakura, are perhaps the most famous expression of this feeling. They bloom for only a week or two, sometimes only a handful of days, and then they fall. And the Japanese have, for more than 1,000 years, gathered beneath those trees not to hold on to the beauty, not to wish it would stay, but simply to be present with it, to feel it fully, to let the petals fall. There is something in that practice that I think might help you sleep. Not the cherry blossoms specifically, though we will return to them, but the idea of presence, of letting something be beautiful without needing to keep it. For now, let your breath slow a little. The days in late February, even when snow is still on the ground, are already growing longer. You may not notice it consciously, but your body does. The cells in your skin are responding to those extra minutes of pale winter sunlight. The pineal gland in the center of your brain, that small and ancient structure, begins to shift its chemistry. Melatonin eases. Serotonin rises, very gradually, like a slow tide. Your body is already turning toward the light before you have any idea it is happening. You are, even now, a creature of spring. Somewhere in the northern forests tonight, a black bear is sleeping in her den. She has been sleeping since November, and her breathing has slowed to just a few shallow breaths per minute. Her heart beats perhaps 8 times in 60 seconds. She is not fully asleep in the way that you might think. She is in a state called torpor, which is something like a very deep meditation, a long and necessary rest. She is not eating. She is not moving. And somewhere within her, perhaps, there are cubs, tiny, blind, extraordinarily small things, born in the warmth of the den in January, sleeping against their mother's side, nursing without her fully waking. New life beginning in the deepest winter. This is one of the most astonishing facts in all of nature, and it happens quietly, invisibly in the dark. By March, the bear will begin to stir. She will yawn a truly spectacular yawn, the yawn of an animal that has slept for 4 months. She will stretch. She will blink at the light. The world will smell different to her than it did in autumn, greener, wetter, alive with the scent of thawing ground and the particular sharpness of pine sap beginning to flow. She will step out of the den, perhaps blinking, perhaps disoriented, and the first thing she will do is find water, then food. Then, after a few days, she will begin to feel like herself again. And the cubs, who have never seen the outside world, will tumble after her into a spring that is, to them, the entire universe. Think about that for a moment if you like. The first thing those cubs have ever known is spring. They will learn color and light and the smell of green things in April. They will learn the sound of meltwater and birdsong and the warmth of sun on fur. Spring will be, for them, the original world. Everything will be new. Everything will be astonishing. The shape of a leaf, the buzz of a bee, the softness of moss beneath a paw. Let your body sink a little deeper into where you are resting. The birds know spring is coming long before we do. In late winter, even on the coldest mornings, you can sometimes hear it, a tentative note here, an exploratory phrase there, like a musician warming up before a performance. The song sparrow in the eastern forests of North America begins to sing in February, even when temperatures are still well below freezing. It perches on a bare branch in the gray morning and sings as if the world has already turned, as if spring is already here, as if its singing could make it so. And perhaps, in some small way, it can. Birdsong is one of the most complex forms of communication in the animal world. A single wood thrush song, that spiral of liquid notes that rises and falls through a forest at dusk, contains more information than you might imagine. It tells other wood thrushes who this bird is, where it is, how healthy it is, how it is feeling at this particular moment. It carries, in a way, the bird's entire self. And yet when you hear it, especially in spring, especially in the early morning when the mist is still on the grass and the dew is still heavy on the leaves, it sounds less like information and more like pure beauty. The dawn chorus, that extraordinary explosion of birdsong that happens in the minutes around sunrise on a spring morning, is something that naturalists and poets have tried to describe for as long as people have been paying attention to such things. It begins in the darkness before sunrise, sometimes an hour or more before the first light appears. The American robin starts things off in North America, its liquid phrases spilling into the cold, dark air. In Britain, it is the song thrush or the blackbird that opens the performance. One by one, more species add their voices, until by the moment of actual sunrise the sound is almost overwhelming. A vast, overlapping tapestry of sound that rises from hedgerows and gardens and forests and parks, a sound that has been happening every spring morning for millions of years, long before any human ear was there to hear it. There are people who wake before dawn in spring just to listen to this. They sit on their doorsteps or in their gardens with a cup of tea going cold in their hands, and they simply listen. Some of them keep lists. Some of them just let the sound wash over them. And after an hour or so, the chorus dies back as the birds get down to the practical business of finding food, and the world settles into the ordinary sounds of morning. But for that brief window, just around sunrise on a spring morning, the world is nothing but music. You might imagine yourself sitting somewhere very comfortable as you listen to this. A garden chair, perhaps, or a patch of warm grass. The air smells of lilac and damp earth. You are not cold. There is a light so gentle it seems barely to exist, that particular pale gold of early morning in May, when the leaves on the trees are still that new, almost luminous shade of green that only lasts for a few weeks each spring before they deepen and darken into summer. The leaves of spring are different from the leaves of summer. This is something that is easy to forget, because by the time summer comes, the spring leaves have already changed. But in April and early May, when the trees are just leafing out, the new leaves have a quality that is almost translucent. Hold one up to the light and you can see the veins running through it like rivers on a map, like the lines on the inside of your wrist. The green is impossibly vivid. It seems to glow. There is a word for this particular shade, a word used by landscape painters and forest lovers, chartreuse, from the French liqueur the Carthusian monks make, which is that exact color, that yellow-green that sits on the edge of both colors and belongs fully to neither. The trees are doing something remarkable when they put out those leaves. An oak tree, which may be 300 years old and have roots that spread for 100 feet in every direction underground, is pumping water up from the soil through its trunk and out into the tips of its branches, where new cells are forming and dividing at a rate that would astonish you if you could see it happening. A single mature oak tree may put out as many as 700,000 leaves in a single spring. Each of those leaves is a tiny solar panel, a miniature factory that will spend the summer turning sunlight and carbon dioxide into sugar. The oak will use that sugar to grow, to flower, to make acorns, to maintain itself through the rest of the year. It will share some of it with the fungal networks in the soil, those fine white threads of mycelium that connect tree roots to each other across the forest floor, the living network that some scientists have started calling the wood wide web. Underground, even now, even as you are reading these words and your breathing is slowing and your eyes are growing heavy, the trees of every forest in the temperate world are connected. They are passing sugars and water and minerals to each other along those fungal threads. A large, healthy tree in the middle of a forest may be supporting dozens of smaller, younger trees around it, feeding them through the network the way you might pass a plate of food to someone sitting across a table from you. The forest is not a collection of separate trees competing for resources. The forest is a community. The forest is, in some sense, a single organism, breathing and communicating and sustaining itself across acres of land and centuries of time. There is something deeply comforting in this if you let it settle into you. The idea that nothing is truly alone, that even in the stillness and darkness of the soil, there is connection, there is care. Let that thought carry you a little deeper into rest. In the rivers and streams of spring, the water is running fast and cold and clear. The snowmelt from the mountains has been finding its way downhill for weeks now, joining the streams, raising the rivers, making the water that was still and dark in winter into something alive and rushing and bright. You can hear it from a distance, that particular sound of moving water, which is perhaps the most universally soothing sound in nature. Every culture, every tradition of relaxation and meditation and healing has used the sound of water. There is a physiological reason for this. The human nervous system, when it hears water moving, associates it with safety. Water means life. Moving water means clean water, oxygenated water, water that is not stagnant. The sound of a stream tells some ancient part of your brain, this place is good. You can rest here. So rest here. The salmon are beginning their spring runs in the rivers of the Pacific Northwest, the rivers of Scotland, the rivers of Scandinavia and Iceland and Japan. These are fish that were born in fresh water, spent years in the ocean growing enormous on the abundance of the sea, and are now following the scent of their birth river back to the exact pool, the exact gravel bed, where their lives began. How they do this is still not completely understood. They seem to use the Earth's magnetic field as a compass. They use the smell of the specific minerals and organic compounds of their home river, which they memorized as fingerlings years ago and have carried in their memories ever since. They use the current, the light, the temperature of the water. Imagine remembering with that kind of precision and certainty the place where you were born. Imagine it pulling you home across thousands of miles of open ocean, pulling you with a force so strong you would leap waterfalls to get there, fight upstream for weeks without eating, give everything you have. That is the salmon. That is what love of home can look like in nature. But tonight, we do not need to leap any waterfalls. We can simply lie here and breathe. The night air in spring carries smells that the night air in winter does not. There is the smell of earth, petrichor, it is called, that particular scent that rises when rain falls on dry soil, produced by bacteria called actinomycetes that live in the ground and release a compound called geosmin into the air when moisture arrives. Humans are extraordinarily sensitive to geosmin. We can detect it at concentrations as low as 5 parts per trillion. This sensitivity evolved, some scientists believe, because the smell of rain on Earth meant water was coming and water meant survival. We are wired to find this smell beautiful. We are wired to feel when we breathe it in that something good is happening. There is also the smell of blossoms. Depending on where you are in the world and what is in bloom, this might be the sweetness of apple blossoms, the headier perfume of lilacs, the clean green fragrance of freshly opened leaves, the honey and vanilla of magnolia. Each of these scents is produced by the flowers for a purpose: to attract the insects that will carry pollen from one flower to another, enabling fertilization, enabling seeds, enabling the next generation of trees. The beauty that we perceive is not, in any simple sense, made for us, and yet we perceive it as beauty anyway. We are moved by it anyway. We stop in the middle of a sidewalk because a lilac bush has opened overnight, and the smell is so strong and so sweet that something in us has to pause and acknowledge it. This is one of the gifts of spring. It insists on being noticed. Even now, even in the most urban and built-up places, spring finds a way through. The weeds pushing up through cracks in pavement, the sparrows nesting in the eaves of buildings, the cherry trees that cities plant along boulevards, which every spring become tunnels of pink and white so beautiful that people come from other countries to stand beneath them. The spring peepers, those small tree frogs that begin singing in warm evenings in April, filling the air near any wet place with a sound that is technically simple, a high, clear peep, repeated over and over, but collectively becomes something else entirely, a chorus so loud and so beautiful that it sounds like bells. The spring peepers are calling to each other, of course. The males are calling to attract females. The females are choosing based on the quality and frequency of the call, but the effect, to human ears, is something that sounds very much like joy. Bees wake in spring. The bumblebee queen, which has been sleeping in a hole in the ground since autumn, emerges in the first warm days of February or March, alone and cold and hungry, the only survivor of last year's colony. She is looking for flowers, any flowers, the earliest ones, the snowdrops and crocuses and willows, because she needs nectar to fuel her flight and pollen to begin building the new colony that she will found entirely by herself. She will find a place to nest, a hole in the ground, a gap in a wall, an abandoned mouse burrow, and she will begin building wax cells and laying eggs, and she will incubate those eggs with the heat of her own body, pressing herself against them like a small, golden, fuzzy sun. By summer, her colony will have dozens or hundreds of workers. By autumn, she will be gone. But this spring, in these cold early weeks, she is carrying the entire future of her family in her body, flying from flower to flower in air that is still barely warm enough for flying because there is no other choice. There is only forward. Let your eyes close a little more, if they are not already closed. The light in spring is different from the light at any other time of year. It has a quality of newness to it, a freshness, as if it is arriving for the first time. In winter, the sun stays low in the sky and its light is thin and comes at an angle, falling on the world sideways, casting long shadows even at midday. But as spring advances, the sun climbs higher. By May in the northern hemisphere, the light comes down more directly, more warmly, striking the world at an angle that makes colors vivid and shadows short. The green of new leaves in May sunlight is a color that painters have struggled with for centuries. There is a light in Impressionist paintings of spring, in Monet's garden at Giverny, in Renoir's studies of trees, in the work of the Japanese woodblock printers who depicted cherry blossoms against skis of extraordinary delicacy, that tries to capture this quality, the shimmer of it, the sense that the air itself is luminous. When sunlight falls through the new leaves of a beech tree, it turns the color of sea glass. It turns the color of water in a shallow cove. It turns the color that you sometimes see in dreams when you are dreaming about being very safe and very warm. This light is called, by some people who love forests, cathedral light, because the canopy of a beech forest in spring has the quality of the stained glass windows of old churches, filtering and coloring the sunlight before it reaches the floor. The forest floor in spring is a world in itself. After the long months of winter, when the dead leaves have had time to decompose and return their nutrients to the soil, the forest floor comes alive in a rush of activity that happens partly because of the light. before the canopy of full summer leaves closes overhead and reduces the amount of sunlight reaching the ground. There is a window, a few weeks in April and May, when the forest floor receives significant direct sunlight. And the plants that have evolved to exploit this window do so with extraordinary efficiency. The wood anemone, with its white star-like flowers, carpets the floor of ancient woodlands in Britain and Europe. Bluebells, those extraordinary flowers that produce, when they bloom en masse, a haze of purple blue that makes the forest floor look like the surface of a lake, bloom in April and May. And their colonies are some of the oldest living things in British woodlands, some of the same plants having flowered in the same spots for centuries. To walk through a bluebell wood in May is an experience that people carry with them for the rest of their lives. The scent alone, sweet and slightly sharp, a smell that belongs only to bluebells and to spring, is enough to stop you in your tracks. In North America, the equivalent experience might be the trout lily, which carpets the floors of eastern forests with its mottled leaves and shy yellow flowers, or the hepatica, which pushes its purple blooms up through the leaf litter before the snow has entirely gone, or the wild trillium, that three-petaled flower that grows so slowly. It takes 7 years for a trillium plant to produce its first flower. That a forest full of trilliums is a forest with a very long and undisturbed history. These flowers are not impatient. They do not hurry. They have been doing this for thousands of years, and they will be doing it for thousands more, and they have found in the brief window of spring sunlight exactly what they need. Your breathing is slower now, I think. Your muscles are a little heavier. The world outside this moment has grown less urgent. Let it recede a little further. The rain of spring is different from the rain of other seasons. Spring rain is soft. It is the rain that fills things up after the emptying of winter, that refills the aquifers and the reservoirs, that washes the dust and the salt off the streets and the last gray snow from the gutters, that comes in the night and leaves the world smelling clean and new in the morning. Spring rain falls into rivers and the rivers rise, spreading over their banks into their flood plains, a process that, when it happens in the right places and at the right times, is not a disaster but a gift. The floodplain is fertilized by that spreading water. The seeds that need moisture to germinate are activated. The frogs and salamanders and turtles that have been hibernating under the mud at the bottom of ponds feel the rise in water temperature and the change in chemical composition and begin to stir. The vernal pool, that most temporary of habitats, that patch of low-lying forest floor that fills with snowmelt and spring rain for a few weeks each year, and then dries up by summer, is one of the most productive ecosystems in the temperate world per acre. Wood frogs breed in vernal pools, arriving at them on the first warm rainy night of spring in congregations so dense and noisy that people walking by them in the dark are sometimes startled to hear what sounds like a crowd of people making strange noises in the forest. Spotted salamanders migrate to the same pools, often from distances of hundreds of meters, following paths that have not changed in generations. Fairy shrimp hatch from eggs that have been lying dormant in the dry mud since the previous spring, eggs so tough they can survive drought, freezing, digestion by birds, wind transport from one continent to another. The fairy shrimp live their entire lives in a few weeks, reproducing and dying before the pool dries, leaving behind the next generation of eggs in the mud. There is something almost philosophical in the life of the fairy shrimp. It lives its whole life in a puddle. Its whole life is a few weeks. It is smaller than your thumbnail, and yet it lives with a completeness and a fullness that we, with all our complexity and our years, might sometimes envy. Everything it needs is here. Everything it is here. It does not know about winter or summer. It knows only this pool, this light, this water, this moment. Perhaps we could borrow something from that. Only this moment, only this breath. In the mountains, spring comes late and slowly. At higher elevations, winter holds on for months after the valley has greened and bloomed. The snowfields linger in the hollows between peaks, slowly diminishing. The streams that carry the meltwater run full and cold and gray-green with suspended glacial sediment, the color of jade or of a shallow tropical sea. Alpine flowers, those extraordinary small plants that have evolved to survive wind and cold and UV radiation, and compress their whole life cycle into the brief summer, begin to bloom in June at the snowline, sometimes pushing their flowers up through the edge of the snowbank itself, as if they cannot wait another day. The pasque flower, which blooms in alpine and subalpine meadows across the northern hemisphere, is one of these. It is covered in fine silvery hairs that protect it from the cold, and it opens its purple petals around the Easter season, hence its name, from the Latin for Easter, even when there is still snow on the ground. It faces its flower toward the sun, tracking it across the sky during the day in a behavior called heliotropism, which increases the temperature inside the flower significantly. Warm enough to attract and shelter the early season insects it needs for pollination, warm enough that those insects, which have been cold since autumn, linger longer than they otherwise would in the cup of warmth the flower offers. This is what the pasque flower does. It offers warmth. It invites lingering. I hope that you are lingering too. Somewhere in the boreal forest of Canada, a pair of loons has returned to the lake where they nested last year. Loons mate for life, or close to it, and they return to the same lake year after year, recognizing it from the air by its shape, its color, the particular way the light falls on it in spring. The male arrives first, usually. He circles the lake, calling that haunting, wavering call that carries for miles across still water, that is perhaps the most evocative sound of the northern wilderness, a sound that seems to contain in it everything lonely and beautiful and vast about the boreal forest at night. He is announcing himself. He is claiming the lake. He is, in a way, saying, I am here. I have come back. The winter is over. The female will arrive in the next few days. There will be a period of reacquaintance, of courtship displays, the pair swimming side by side, diving in synchrony, rising up from the water breast to breast in that extraordinary display called the penguin dance. Then they will build their nest at the water's edge, barely above the waterline, a messy pile of vegetation with a cup in the center just big enough for 2 eggs. The eggs are olive green and spotted, and they are incubated by both parents who take turns lying on the nest in the rain and sun of May and June. When the chicks hatch, they are extraordinary, dark, fluffy, wide-eyed, and already able to swim. Within hours of hatching, they climb onto their parents' backs and ride there, safe above the cold water looking out at the lake that is, for them, the whole world. Maybe the whole world really is this lake, this night, this breath. In the gardens of the world, bulbs are doing something extraordinary. Daffodils and tulips and hyacinths, which have been sitting as compact packages of stored energy in the cold soil since autumn, have been measuring the cold. They count the weeks of winter. They need a certain number of weeks below a certain temperature. This process is called vernalization, before they can bloom. This is why you cannot grow daffodils in the tropics. They need the cold to teach them that spring has come. They need the winter to make the blooming possible. There is something in that worth sitting with. The cold has a purpose. The dark has a purpose. Without the winter, there can be no spring. A daffodil bulb in the soil has been doing something like dreaming for months. Its energy is stored in the fleshy scales of the bulb, which are really modified leaves, each one packed with starches and sugars and proteins. As the soil temperature rises in late winter, signals begin to move through the plant, hormonal signals, chemical cascades, the slow awakening of genes that have been silent since autumn. A flower bud that has been waiting, perfectly formed, inside the bulb since last summer begins to grow. The stem begins to extend. The bud pushes upward through layers of soil, guided by the gradients of temperature and light above it. And then one morning you look out the window and there it is, a single yellow flower, nodding slightly in the March wind, its trumpet turned toward you as if to say, I made it. I am here. The daffodil is such a common sight in spring that we sometimes forget to be astonished by it. But it has done something remarkable. It has waited in the dark. It has endured the cold. It has stored its energy and its potential through months of stillness. And then, when the moment was exactly right, it has come up through the earth and opened itself to the light. That is exactly the right thing to do. Let the thought settle. The swallows come back to Capistrano every spring, on almost exactly the same date, March 19, St. Joseph's Day. They have been flying for weeks from their wintering grounds in Argentina, crossing thousands of miles of land and sea by magnetic compass and star map, and the position of the sun. The old mission at San Juan Capistrano has swallow nests tucked into its ancient walls that have been used continuously for generations. The same birds return to the same nests. Their children return to nests nearby. The colony grows over decades. The walls of the mission are pocked with mud cups, each one a small home, each one inhabited by birds that have traveled thousands of miles to be exactly here. This is what migration is, an act of extraordinary faithfulness, a commitment to a particular place, a particular moment, a particular spring. The swallow does not choose to migrate. It is drawn to it, called to it. The days shortening in autumn trigger hormonal changes that make the bird restless, anxious, unable to settle. It eats more than usual, storing fat for the journey. And then one morning it rises and goes, joining thousands of other swallows, the air full of them, their chatter filling the sky over the town for a few days before they are gone. And then spring calls them back. The lengthening days in South America trigger the same restlessness, the same calling. They rise, all of them, and go north, thousands of miles, over ocean, through storms, navigating by senses we barely understand, and they come back to Capistrano. They come back to the same walls, the same nests, the same spring. What is it that calls us home? What is it that we are always, on some level, trying to return to? Perhaps it is something as simple as this: warmth, light, the smell of rain on earth, the sound of water, the feeling of the sun on skin after a long, cold time. Perhaps spring is not just a season, but a state of being that we are always trying to find. The frogs have been singing for a while now. Spring peepers first, then wood frogs, then the American toad with his long musical trill, then the green frog with his single pluck string note, then the bullfrog with his deep, resonant bass that seems to come from somewhere beneath the water rather than above it. Each species has its song, its timing, its particular moment in the spring chorus. They layer over each other, adding and subtracting, building and falling, until by a warm night in May, a pond surrounded by forest is so full of sound that you have to raise your voice to speak to someone standing next to you. And then sometimes all at once they stop. It might be a predator, a heron or a mink approaching the edge of the water. It might be a temperature drop, a sudden chill that silences them. It might be nothing at all that a human could perceive. But the sound stops and there is a moment of absolute silence, and in that silence the night is immense and still and full of stars. And then one by one they start again. A single peeper first, then another, and another. Until the whole chorus is back, as if it never stopped, as if the silence were just a breath the pond was taking. You can take a breath now too. The northern lights, the aurora borealis, are sometimes visible in spring at latitudes further south than they appear in winter, because the geomagnetic activity of the sun is slightly higher during the equinoxes. On clear nights in March and April, people in Scotland and Canada and Scandinavia and the northern United States sometimes step outside and find the sky moving. Green curtains of light, shifting and folding, and sometimes flashing with touches of purple and red. The lights move like fabric in a slow wind, like something alive, like the sky is breathing. They have been described as holy. They have been described as terrifying. They have been described as the most beautiful thing a person has ever seen. They are caused by charged particles from the sun colliding with the molecules of the atmosphere, and they occur in an oval around the magnetic poles. When the solar wind is strong, this oval expands, and the lights can be seen further south. But this explanation, while accurate, does not really address the experience of standing in a cold field on a clear night in April and watching the sky fill with light. It does not address what happens to your breathing when you see them, or the fact that people who live where the aurora is common still go outside every time it appears, still stand with their faces upturned, still feel something that has no ordinary name. Some of the Old Norse peoples believed the aurora was the light from the shields of the Valkyries, reflecting across the sky as they rode to collect the honored dead. The Finnish word for the aurora, revontulet, means fox fires, from a myth about a great fox that ran across the sky, its tail brushing the mountains and sending sparks into the dark. The Inuit of northern Canada had many names for the aurora and many stories about it. That it was the spirits of the dead playing football with a walrus skull, that it was a sign of weather to come, that you could make it dance by whistling at it. Whatever they are, wherever they come from, they are one of the things that spring can give you, a sky that is alive. In the valleys and meadows, the flowers of April are doing their careful work. Dandelions, those much maligned flowers that grow everywhere and that most gardeners spend considerable energy trying to eliminate, are, from an ecological standpoint, one of the most valuable plants in the temperate world. They bloom early, when very little else is in flower, and they provide nectar and pollen to insects that have been starving since autumn. A single dandelion lawn in early April is a banquet. The bumblebee queen we mentioned earlier depends on flowers like dandelions to survive in those first cold weeks. The honeybee colony, which has been living all winter on stored honey, sends its first foragers out to dandelions and willows and crocuses as soon as the temperature is warm enough to fly. The dandelion is not a weed. The dandelion is a hero of spring. And the dandelion seed head, that perfect sphere of white filaments that children have been blowing and counting for as long as children have existed, is a marvel of engineering. Each seed is attached to a parachute of fine hairs called a pappus, and each parachute is not simply a closed disc, but a complex structure with gaps in it that create a vortex of air underneath. A tiny ring-shaped air bubble that keeps the seed aloft for much longer than a solid parachute would. Scientists discovered this only recently, through high-speed photography and fluid dynamics modeling, and found that dandelion seeds can travel many miles on a moderate wind, landing in new places and beginning new plants, carrying the spring with them wherever they go. Imagine being a dandelion seed drifting on a warm April afternoon. The world is enormous below you. The roads and houses and gardens are a patchwork of color. You can see the flash of a river, the dark green of a forest, the pale green of new wheat in a field. The air smells of everything at once. You drift for a while, rising on a thermal, and then you are falling, softly spiraling downward toward a patch of grass at the edge of a field. You come to rest in the soil, and you begin. That is enough to know. That is the whole plan. Land, begin. The geese are flying tonight somewhere. The Canada geese, the snow geese, the white-fronted geese, all heading north in their ragged V formations, calling as they fly. Their voices carrying down through the dark air to the people and the animals below. The V formation is not simply aesthetic, it is aerodynamic. Each bird, except the leader, flies in the slightly upwashed air created by the wingtip vortex of the bird ahead, reducing the energy needed to stay aloft. They take turns at the front, where the work is hardest. They honk encouragement to each other. They are, in their own way, a community in flight, cooperating, taking turns, supporting each other across thousands of miles of air. The formation is ancient. Geese have been flying north in spring for millions of years, long before the cities and the highways and the lit-up windows were below them. They flew over the ice sheets of the last glaciation. They flew over the forests that replaced the ice. They flew over the first farms and the first roads. They are flying now. Somewhere above you tonight, if you could hear past all the ordinary sounds of where you are, there might be geese calling to each other in the dark, heading north, following the lengthening days, going home to the tundra and the Arctic coast. Follow them a little if you like in your mind. North and north, over the fields and the forests, over the great inland lakes, over the Shield Rock and the Muskeg and the Boreal Forest, to where the land opens out into the tundra and the sky is enormous, and the light in summer never quite goes away. In spring, the tundra thaws from the top down, and the surface becomes a network of small ponds and wet meadows absolutely teeming with life. Insects in their billions. Shorebirds and waterfowl from every wintering ground on Earth. The caribou herds moving north, their hooves clicking as they walk, calves running to keep up. The Arctic fox, whose coat has gone from white to brown, trotting across the thawing ground, hunting the lemmings that are exploding in number in the newly available vegetation. And the light above the Arctic in June, when the sun circles the horizon and never fully sets, is unlike any other light on Earth. It is golden and long and sideways, casting the world in amber and rose, making every object cast a long shadow that slowly moves around it as the sun travels its endless circling path. It is the light at the end of the world, or perhaps the beginning of it. It is a light that makes you feel, even in photographs, even in memory, that you are standing at the very edge of something vast and ancient and completely indifferent to the small matters of your day. And yet within it, small things happen. A sandpiper lays 4 eggs in a cup of grass. A musk ox calf, still wet, struggles to its feet. A bumblebee, Bombus polaris, the Arctic bumblebee, lands on a tiny yellow Arctic poppy and drinks, its wings folded, its body warming in the low sun. Small things, precious things. Let yourself become small if that helps, small and quiet and present in exactly this moment. The soil of spring is alive in ways that are mostly invisible to us. A single teaspoon of healthy forest soil contains more individual living organisms than there are people on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, mites, springtails, earthworms, beetle larvae, the eggs of countless insects. The soil is not simply dirt, not simply a medium in which plants grow. It is an ecosystem of extraordinary complexity and richness, as alive and various and interdependent as any coral reef or tropical forest. And in spring, as the soil warms, this ecosystem wakes up. The bacteria begin to metabolize faster. The fungi extend their hyphae. The earthworms, which have been deeper in the soil through the cold, move upward toward the surface, aerating and mixing the soil as they go, making it loose and workable, pulling dead leaves down from the surface and beginning to break them into the nutrient-rich castings that feed the plants. Charles Darwin spent years studying earthworms. He played the bassoon to them. He placed them on tables that transmitted vibration from the piano and watched to see if they responded. He measured the rate at which they pulled leaves into their burrows. He calculated how many years it would take earthworms to bury an ancient Roman pavement in his garden, and then verified the calculation by digging it up and measuring. He was, by his own account, delighted by earthworms. He called them, in the last book he ever published, among the most important animals in the history of the world. He was right. Without earthworms, the soil becomes compacted and airless and unable to support plant life. The great agricultural civilizations of history were built on soil that earthworms had prepared over thousands of years. Every garden, every farm, every forest that grows on good deep soil is, in part, a monument to the earthworm. And tonight, while you sleep, the earthworms are working. They are eating and moving and aerating the earth. They are making the spring possible. They are, in their slow and ancient way, taking care of everything. Let someone else take care of things for a while. The cherry blossoms. We should come back to the cherry blossoms. In Japan, the sakura, the cherry blossom, blooms for approximately 1 week each spring, sometimes less. The exact date of the bloom varies from year to year depending on the weather, and since ancient times the Japanese imperial court maintained a system of observers who watched cherry trees across the country and reported when they bloomed. Today, the Japan Meteorological Corporation still issues a sakura forecast each year, predicting the blooming dates for hundreds of locations across the country, and millions of people plan their schedules around it. The practice of hanami, flower viewing literally, dates back more than 1,000 years to the Heian period, when the aristocracy would gather under the cherry trees to eat and drink and write poetry about the transience of the blossoms. The poetry they wrote was, and is, always about the same thing. The blossoms are beautiful because they do not last. The falling of the petals is not a tragedy, but the point. To see them fall is to understand something important about the nature of time. In the years since the pandemic interrupted the ordinary rhythms of life, hanami has taken on new meaning for many people. The return to the simple practice of sitting under a flowering tree with friends, of noticing the beauty of a thing that will not last, felt, for many people, like a kind of homecoming, like a rediscovery of something that had always been available but had been overlooked. The cherry tree does not know it is beautiful. It does not know that people travel thousands of miles to see it bloom. It is simply doing what cherry trees do, sending up its flowers before its leaves, in the late cold days of early spring, on bare branches that make the flowers all the more visible against the sky. The flowers come first because this is the cherry tree's strategy for pollination. Bloom before the leaves appear, so that the pollinators can find the flowers more easily, so that the bees and flies that are just waking up have an easy target in the pale spring sky. The beauty is not for us, and yet it is somehow ours. Petal by petal, the cherry blossoms fall. They fall on the people sitting beneath them, on the food they are eating, into their cups. They drift across the path. They collect in small drifts in the corners of walls. They land on the surface of the water in the pond and float there, turning slowly before they waterlog and sink. A single cherry tree in full bloom can produce tens of thousands of flowers, and when they fall, all at once, in a spring wind, the air is white with them, and for a moment you are standing inside the most gentle snow you have ever experienced. This is the moment that the Japanese poets have been writing about for 1,000 years. Maybe you can imagine it now. Maybe you can feel the petals on your face, so light you barely feel them, just a whisper of coolness. The air smells of blossoms and of the earth warming in the sun. Somewhere nearby, someone is laughing very softly. There are voices, distant, not words, just the sound of people being comfortable together. The light through the petals is pink and gold and falling. You can rest there for as long as you like. The maple trees of eastern North America are doing something extraordinary in early spring, before their leaves have opened. On cold nights and warm days, the sap that is stored as sugar in the roots of the tree begins to flow upward through the trunk, driven by the pressure changes created by the freezing and thawing cycle. This is the maple sap season, the season of the sugar bush, of steam rising from sugar houses, of the taste of something sweet and slightly smoky and purely of the land. To make a gallon of maple syrup requires approximately 40 gallons of sap. And that sap comes from trees that may be 100 years old or more, tapped with small metal spiles that barely interrupt the vast flows of liquid moving through the tree. The sap is mostly water. It tastes only faintly of sweetness when it runs from the tap. But when it is boiled down, the water evaporates and the sugars concentrate into the amber sweetness that has been part of the food of North America for thousands of years, long before Europeans arrived, made and shared by the indigenous peoples who knew the forest and its rhythms better than anyone since. The sugar house in maple season smells like no other place on earth, of wood smoke and boiling sap, of steam and sweetness, of the particular mineral-sweet smell of maple on a cold, bright day. It is a smell that people who have known it carry all their lives, that can bring back years of memory in a single breath. The smell of a maple sugar house is the smell of early spring in the Northeast, before the leaves, before the warmth, when the world is still mostly gray and brown, and the bright days alternate with cold nights, and the trees are running. The hummingbirds will follow. The ruby-throated hummingbird migrates north along the coastlines of the eastern United States in spring, arriving in the southeast in March and moving progressively northward as the flowers open. By May, it is in New England. By June, it is in Canada. It travels up to 2,000 miles from its winter home in Central America, crossing the Gulf of Mexico in a single night flight, a journey of 500 miles over open water with no place to stop. It weighs less than a nickel. It has a heart that beats 1,200 times per minute during flight. And when it arrives at your garden, it goes straight for the red flowers. The cardinal flowers, the columbines, the trumpet vines. It hovers in front of them, its wings a blur, its long tongue licking deep into the flower's nectary, and then it moves on to the next flower, the next garden, the next territory. It is in constant motion. It lives its entire life at a speed that would exhaust us. It must eat half its weight in nectar every day just to maintain itself. At night, the hummingbird does not simply sleep. It enters torpor, that same slowing of metabolism that the bear uses in winter, but the hummingbird uses it every night, letting its temperature drop and its heart rate slow almost to nothing, becoming something barely alive until the warmth of morning wakes it. It wakes, it warms, and then it is back, hovering, feeding, moving, an impossibility of flight and color that is one of the miracles of spring. Let the miracles come to you tonight. You do not have to go looking for them. In the oceans, spring comes too, though differently. The longer days and the angle of the sunlight trigger a bloom of phytoplankton, those microscopic plants that form the base of the ocean food web, that is so vast it can be seen from space. From satellites, the spring bloom appears as a swirling, spreading blue-green stain across the North Atlantic, moving northward as the season advances. In the upwelling zones where cold, nutrient-rich water rises from the deep, the bloom is densest, and the water turns from clear blue to a murky green as billions upon billions of microscopic plants photosynthesize, reproduce, and die in the lit upper layers of the sea. Every creature in the ocean depends in some way on this bloom. The zooplankton, the tiny animals, the copepods and krill and larval fish, graze on the phytoplankton in enormous numbers. The fish that eat the zooplankton gather in schools. The whales and seabirds and seals that eat the fish follow the bloom northward as spring advances, and the ocean fills with life that was absent or sparse in winter. The humpback whale spends summer feeding in the cold, productive waters of the North Atlantic or North Pacific, eating krill and small fish in enormous quantities, laying on the fat stores that will sustain it through the winter. In spring, it moves into these feeding grounds from its winter breeding areas in the tropics. The whale is enormous and graceful and strange, and it sings, the males sing, with a complexity and a beauty that has genuinely moved everyone who has ever heard it. The songs of humpback whales are long, sometimes lasting for hours, and they evolve over the course of a breeding season, with new phrases spreading through a population in a way that sounds uncomfortably like culture, like tradition, like something being passed on. What are they singing about? We do not know, not fully. We know that the songs function in breeding and mate attraction. We know that whales in the same ocean all sing the same song, and that the song changes over the years. We know that when two oceans' populations come into contact, the songs can cross-pollinate, with new phrases from one group spreading into another. But what the whale experiences when it sings, what, if anything, it feels, is something we cannot know. We can only listen, through underwater microphones, to the long, strange, melancholy beauty of a whale's song, and feel something that does not quite have a name. Some of the lowest frequencies of whale sound, below what human ears can hear, travel thousands of miles through the deep ocean channels where sound is focused and amplified. It is theoretically possible that, in the years before industrial shipping filled the oceans with noise, a whale singing in the North Atlantic could be heard by a whale in the North Pacific. That the ocean was, in some sense, one enormous chamber of whale song. This planet we live on is stranger and more beautiful than we usually remember. Close your eyes and remember it now. In the ancient Japanese tradition of kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold, the cracks in a broken bowl are not hidden but highlighted. The repair is made with lacquer mixed with gold or silver, so that the lines of breakage become the most beautiful thing about the object. The bowl is more valuable after it has been broken and repaired. The history of its damage is part of its beauty. Spring feels like this to me. It comes after the damage of winter, and it does not try to pretend the winter did not happen. The bare branches, the dark ground, the dried stalks of last year's plants, spring comes into all of that and begins building, layer by layer, something new and green and alive. But the structure of winter is still there underneath. The roots have been in the cold. The bark remembers the frost. The whole world is a kind of kintsugi, repaired with green and gold, beautiful because of what it has endured. You too are a kind of kintsugi. All the things you have been through, the cold seasons, the long nights, the times when things broke, they are part of what you are now. The spring does not ask you to forget the winter. It simply offers you this: warmth, light, a beginning. A beginning is enough. The smell of rain on dry earth, petrichor, comes from a compound called geosmin produced by bacteria, as we said earlier. But there is another component to the smell of rain that comes from the oils that plants produce, and that collect on the surfaces of rocks and soil during dry periods. When rain falls, it traps tiny bubbles of air in the surface and then releases them, and those bubbles carry the scent upward in tiny aerosols. You are, when you smell rain, inhaling plant oil that has been waiting in the stone and soil for weeks or months, released at last by the water. You are inhaling time. Every smell is a piece of time. Every smell that your body recognizes as beautiful or comforting or safe is a record of a moment when that smell meant something good was happening, or is simply one of those deep evolutionary associations that your species has been building for millions of years, long before any individual's memory began. The smell of earth, the smell of green growing things, the smell of sun-warmed wood, the smell of water. These are the smells of safety, of home, of a world that is working the way it is supposed to work. Your body knows this. Your body relaxes when these smells are in the air. Your nervous system downshifts. Your muscles loosen. Something ancient and very old in you says, "Here, this is right. This is where we belong. Here, this moment, this breath." The spring moon is full tonight somewhere in the world, and somewhere people are standing beneath it in fields and gardens, feeling what people have always felt standing in moonlight, that the world is enormous and mysterious and very, very old. The moon that is rising over your horizon tonight is the same moon that rose over the fields where the first farmers planted their first seeds, the same moon that lit the way for the migrations of the first humans out of Africa, the same moon that has watched over every spring that has ever happened on this planet. The full moon of spring has many names: the Paschal moon, which determines the date of Easter, the sprouting grass moon of the Algonquin peoples, the egg moon, the fish moon. Each name is a story, a piece of the relationship between human beings and the season, a record of what mattered in the spring of whatever time and place those names came from. In many traditions, spring was the beginning of the year. Not January, not the midwinter solstice, but the actual spring, the return of green things, the return of warmth, the time of planting. The Persian New Year, Nowruz, is still celebrated on the spring equinox. The Jewish Passover, the Christian Easter, the Hindu Holi, the Japanese Hanami, all of them cluster around the spring, around the return of life, around the idea that after darkness, something new and good begins. And it does. It always does. Every year, without exception, without failure, the spring comes. The darkness does not last. The cold does not last. The seeds that seemed dead in the frozen ground reveal themselves to have been simply waiting, simply resting, gathering themselves for the extraordinary act of growth. Let yourself be extraordinary tonight by doing the simplest thing: resting. The spiders are back in spring. They have been, most of them, hiding through the winter in crevices, in leaf litter, in the sheltered spots where they have waited out the cold. And now they are spinning again, and on spring mornings, when the sun first hits the grass, the world reveals its spiderwebs. Every blade of grass seems connected to every other by the finest of threads. Every hedge and fence post has its own web, gleaming with dew. The whole ordinary world, in the light of a spring morning, is revealed to be a world of invisible architectures, a world woven into itself by silk and patience. A garden spider's web is a feat of engineering that scientists have been studying for decades. The silk is stronger than steel of the same diameter and more elastic than nylon. The spiral threads are coated with tiny droplets of glue that can stretch and recoil without breaking, capturing insects without the web itself tearing. The spider feels every vibration of the web through its legs, distinguishing between the struggles of trapped prey and the meaningless movements of wind and debris. The web is, in a sense, an extension of the spider's nervous system, a tool for perceiving the world. When the morning dew settles on a spider's web, each tiny thread is beaded with droplets that reflect the light. Seen from the right angle, in the low gold light of a spring morning, a dewy spider web looks like a necklace of diamonds, or like a galaxy mapped in miniature. It is one of the most perfectly beautiful things in the world, and it is everywhere every morning, in every garden and hedgerow and patch of grass where spiders live. All you have to do is look. Tomorrow morning, if you wake early and go outside before the sun has had time to burn the dew away, you will see them everywhere. In the meantime, let the image of them be here with you. The garden, silver gray in the morning, the web strung between the stalks of the lavender, each thread holding its row of perfect droplets, the light beginning to come through the trees at the end of the garden, the birds beginning to sing. And you, standing there in the cool air, in your slippers on the damp grass, coffee in hand, watching the world reveal itself. You do not need to do anything, just watch. In the hedgerows of England, the hawthorn is coming into leaf. The hawthorn is one of the oldest plants in British culture. Its white flowers called May blossom because they bloom in May. Its appearance in the hedges the traditional signal that spring has fully arrived and summer is beginning. To bring May blossom inside the house was, in the old country traditions, very bad luck, perhaps because the flowers have a smell that chemically includes trimethylamine, a compound that is also produced by decaying matter and so associated by the body with death. But outside in the hedgerows, the May is glorious. It turns the lanes white with blossom. It fills the air with its complex, slightly dark sweetness. It feeds the bees and the hoverflies, and the butterflies that come to drink from the nectar it offers so freely. The hawthorn also shelters the nests of dozens of species of birds. Wrens, dunnocks, yellowhammers, whitethroats all weave their nests into the dense, thorny structure of the hawthorn hedge, which is both shelter and fortress, difficult for predators to reach. The hedge is a whole ecosystem, nesting birds, insects, spiders, small mammals, and dozens of species of plant growing in its shade and structure. The Old English hedgerows, some of which have been in place for centuries, are among the most biodiverse habitats in the British Isles, more species-rich, per meter, than almost any other landscape type. In Germany and Austria, there is a tradition called Maybaumsaufstellen, the raising of the maypole. A tall pine tree, stripped of most of its branches and decorated with colored ribbons and wreaths, is raised in the village square on the first day of May. The young people of the village dance around it, the ribbons plaiting and unplaiting in complex patterns. It is an ancient tradition, its origins obscure, its meaning something about the return of the green world, about the fertility and abundance of spring, about the community coming together to celebrate what the season has brought. Maypole dances, green men carved in stone above church doorways, the hawthorn blossom brought into houses until the taboo forbade it, the flowers strewn on doorsteps, the first cuckoo welcomed with joy. All of these are traces of the immense weight that spring once carried in human life. When your survival depended on the return of warmth, on the crops going in, on the animals giving birth, spring was not merely pleasant. Spring was everything. Spring was the difference between life and death. We have lost this in many ways, insulated as most of us are now from the direct consequences of the weather, from the immediacy of the seasons. But the body remembers. The body still lifts with the return of light in February. The body still carries what feels like joy in the chest on a warm April morning. The body still slows and saddens in the short days of November. We are still seasonal creatures, whether we know it or not. And right now, wherever you are in the year, wherever spring is for you, arrived, approaching, remembered, or anticipated, your body is doing its seasonal work, regulating its chemistry in response to light and temperature and smell, preparing in its deep and ancient way for whatever comes next. For now, what comes next is sleep. The apple orchards of the world are in blossom in April and May. An apple orchard in bloom is one of the most extravagant sights of spring. Thousands of flowers on every tree, pink and white against the pale sky. The air so heavy with sweetness that you can smell it from the road. Honeybees navigate the orchard with extraordinary efficiency, moving through the rows of trees in patterns that ensure they cover every flower. A single bee may visit hundreds of flowers in a single trip, carrying pollen from one tree to another, fertilizing the flowers that will become the apples of autumn. The apple was not always the fruit we know. The wild ancestor of the domestic apple, Malus sieversii, still grows in the forests of Kazakhstan, in the Tian Shan Mountains, in a landscape that is now partially protected because it contains the greatest diversity of wild apple species anywhere on Earth. These wild apples are not the familiar smooth-skinned globes of the supermarket. They are small and bitter and varied and strange. They are the source of every cultivated apple variety that has ever existed: the Bramley, the Cox, the Granny Smith, the Fuji, the Honeycrisp, all of them descended from those small wild fruits in the mountains of Central Asia. The apple traveled west along the Silk Road, was cultivated and improved by generations of farmers, was taken to the Americas by European colonists, and is now grown on every continent except Antarctica. It has been central to the stories and myths of dozens of cultures. The apple of discord that started the Trojan War, the apple that tempted Eve, the apple that fell on Newton's head, the apple that Snow White ate. Apples are woven into the Western imagination as a symbol of knowledge and temptation, and abundance and home. And they begin, every year in the spring, in the extraordinary abundance of the orchard in bloom, in the hard and patient work of the bees. There are seeds, right now, beginning to grow. In gardens and in greenhouses and in the dark of the soil, seeds that were planted last week or last month are pushing out their first tiny roots, reaching downward for water and anchor, pushing up the thin green thread of the first leaf toward the light. This happens millions of times every day in spring, this small miracle that is so common we barely notice it. A seed that has been dry and dormant and apparently dead for months, sometimes years, breaks open and begins to grow. The biochemistry of germination is extraordinarily complex, involving the precise regulation of dozens of hormones and enzymes and gene expressions, all triggered by the right combination of moisture and temperature and sometimes light. But the experience of it from the outside is simply this: a beginning. A bean seed left on a damp paper towel will sprout within 2 or 3 days. You can watch it happen. The seed swells. A tiny white root appears at one end, then curves downward, then branches. A shoot appears at the other end, pale green, pushing upward and curving back on itself in that characteristic hook that protects the growing tip as it pushes through the soil. And then it straightens, and the first leaves unfurl, and the plant is born. Gardeners and farmers and anyone who has ever put a seed in the ground knows this feeling, the checking every day to see if anything has come up, the slight anxiety that perhaps nothing will, the disproportionate joy when the first green loop appears at the soil surface. The miracle of it, familiar as it is, never quite loses its quality of miracle. You were once a kind of seed, something small and full of potential, containing everything you would become, waiting for the right conditions. And then you grew. You are still growing. But tonight you rest. The evenings are longer now in spring. In winter the sun sets in the mid-afternoon in high latitudes, and the long dark evenings have a weight to them, a heaviness. But in spring, the days stretch out and the evening light lingers. There is a word for the light that happens in the hour before sunset. The golden hour, photographers call it, or the magic hour. The light is warm and low, and it gilds everything it touches: the tops of the trees, the grass, the side of a house, the face of someone you love. It is a light that makes everything look like it is worth remembering. And then, after the golden hour, there is the twilight, the blue hour. The sky after sunset goes through a series of colors, orange fading to yellow, then to pale green, then to the deep blue that gives this time its name. The first stars appear in the east while the west is still faintly lit. The birds are quieting. The bats are coming out, those small, flickering shapes that appear at dusk, hunting the insects that have risen in the warm evening air. The air smells of the day's warmth releasing back into the atmosphere, of cut grass and blossoms, and the particular freshness of spring evenings. Somewhere, a nightingale begins to sing. The nightingale sings at night, unlike most birds, and has done so for so long and so beautifully that it has become a symbol of night music, of the singing that happens in the dark. John Keats heard a nightingale singing in a garden in Hampstead in 1819 and wrote, in a few hours, one of the most famous poems in the English language. A poem about the bird's song and about the way beauty and mortality and the desire to escape time are tangled together in the experience of listening to something very beautiful in the dark. He wrote it on scraps of paper, sitting under a plum tree in the garden, and it was published within weeks. The nightingale has been singing in English gardens for millions of years. Keats heard it for a few hours one spring morning in 1819, and what he felt when he listened has been read and felt by millions of people ever since. This is what art does. This is what music does. This is what the nightingale's song does in its own way. It opens something in you that is larger than your ordinary self. It reminds you that the world is ancient and beautiful and full of things that do not need you in order to exist, and that this is not a sad fact but a liberating one. You can let the world be large. You can let the nightingale sing without you having to do anything about it. You can rest. In the meadows, the grass is long now in late spring, waving in the wind with a motion that is hypnotic to watch. Each blade of grass is a solar collector, a water processor, a habitat. Billions of insects live in the tall grass of a meadow, beetles and grasshoppers and caterpillars and aphids and lacewings and thrips, all of them going about their complex lives in the green tangle. The meadow is noisy in summer, but in late spring it is just beginning, just opening up. The first flowers have appeared, buttercups and clover and ragged robin, and the bees have found them. The swallows sweep low over the meadow, collecting insects in their wide gaping mouths. The kestrel hovers at the meadow's edge, hanging in the wind, watching the grass below with its extraordinary vision. A kestrel's vision is 4 times sharper than a human's. It can see into the ultraviolet spectrum, which means it can follow the urine trails of voles across the grass, those trails that are invisible to us but glow in UV light like neon signs for the bird that hunts them. A kestrel hovering over a meadow is not guessing. It knows exactly where the voles are, where they are going, what they have been doing. It sees a world we cannot imagine, a world lit with trails and signatures, every surface annotated with biological information. What would it be like to see that much? To have the world translated into so much information? Perhaps it would be wonderful. Perhaps it would be exhausting. Perhaps the simplicity of the human senses, incomplete as they are, is part of what allows us to find anything beautiful. We do not see everything. We hear only a part of what is happening. And in those gaps we find mystery, and in the mystery we find meaning. Close your eyes and let the mystery be there. The soil is breathing, not metaphorically, literally. Soil releases carbon dioxide through the activity of its microorganisms and absorbs oxygen in quantities that scientists can measure. In spring, as the soil warms and the microbes become more active, this breathing increases. The soil exhales. The meadow, the forest, the garden, all of them are breathing, all of the time, in and out, carbon and oxygen, the slow respiration of the earth. You are part of this cycle. The carbon in your body was not so long ago in the atmosphere. Plants took it in and built themselves from it, and then you ate those plants or ate the animals that ate those plants, and the carbon became you. And when you breathe out, you return carbon to the air, and the plants take it in again. You are not separate from this cycle. You are part of it. You are, in the most literal sense, made of the same stuff as the spring. Take a long breath in, hold it for a moment, and let it go. The forests of the world are dreaming tonight. Or perhaps they do not dream, perhaps that is too human a word. But they are doing something in the dark that they do not do in the day. They are resting their photosynthesis. The stomata, the tiny pores in the leaves through which they take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen, close at night. The chemical processes of the day slow or stop. The tree stands in the dark, its leaves still, its roots still drinking from the soil, its chemistry ticking over at its nighttime pace. But the forest is not silent. The owls are calling. The badgers are moving through the undergrowth, their short legs carrying them with surprising speed and efficiency, their striped faces low to the ground as they follow the scent trails of earthworms and beetles. A fox trots along the edge of the forest and stops to listen, lifting one foot, its ears swiveling forward. The wood mice run their regular routes through the leaf litter, their whiskers sensing every obstacle in the dark. The moths, those overlooked and undervalued creatures, are at work, feeding on nectar and being fed upon, completing the pollination of flowers that bloom only at night precisely because the moths are there to serve them. The moth is the night's equivalent of the bee. Night-blooming flowers, evening primrose, night-scented stock, white-flowered tobacco plants, moonflowers, have evolved their pale petals and their intense fragrance to attract moths. The flowers are white or pale to be visible in low light. Their fragrance is strongest in the evening hours. They produce nectar in abundance. The moth finds them by following a plume of scent molecules drifting on the night air, navigating upstream toward the source the way we might follow the smell of bread baking. The hawk moth is perhaps the most spectacular of the night-flying pollinators. With a wingspan of several inches and a hovering flight that mimics the hummingbird's technique, it is able to feed from long-tubed flowers that no bee could reach. Its proboscis, its tongue, can be as long as its body, curled up under its head when not in use, unrolling to probe deep into the flower's nectary. There are some flowers in Madagascar whose nectar tubes are so long that scientists, when they first described them, predicted there must be a moth with a correspondingly long tongue to pollinate them. Years later, they found it. This is the elegance of coevolution, two living things developing together over millions of years, fitting each other perfectly, each one the solution to the other's problem. The flower evolved a long tube to ensure that only its dedicated pollinator could reach the nectar. The moth evolved a long tongue to reach what no other insect could. They need each other. Without the moth, the flower cannot reproduce. Without the flower, the moth cannot feed. They are bound together by a relationship that began before there were human eyes to see it. All life is these relationships, all of it. The bee and the flower, the whale and the krill, the oak and the mycorrhizal fungi, the earthworm and the soil, the spring and the sleeping seed. Everything is connected to everything else in chains and webs and networks of dependence and exchange that are so complex we have barely begun to map them. And you are part of it. You are in the web. The air you breathe was made by plants. The food you eat was grown in soil made by earthworms and bacteria. The water in your body fell as rain on mountains and ran in rivers to the sea and evaporated and fell again. You are, in the most intimate and literal sense, connected to everything that has ever been alive on this planet. You are not alone. You have never been alone. Stars are out tonight. They have been out every night since before there was a planet to look up at them from, and they will be out every night after the last light goes out on Earth. They are fires so enormous that the sun, our sun, whose light makes spring possible, whose warmth wakes the seeds and the bears and the bees, is an average and unremarkable member of the population. The nearest star to our own is 4 light-years away, which means the light leaving it right now will not reach our eyes for 4 years. The stars we see are not where they appear to be. They are not even, in many cases, still there. We are looking into the past always when we look at the night sky. The universe is a history lesson written in light. And the spring that happens on this small planet, orbiting this average star in this ordinary galaxy, it is both entirely insignificant by that scale and completely, utterly real. The dandelion pushing through the pavement crack is as real as a star. The cherry blossom falling is as real as a supernova. The frog singing in the pond has as much right to existence as a galaxy. And you, lying here in the quiet, breathing slowly, feeling the heaviness of sleep beginning to come, you are as real and as important as any of it. You are the universe experiencing itself. You are spring noticing itself. You are the miracle of a conscious creature, aware for a brief and astonishing time, lying here in the dark, being here, being alive, being part of everything that has ever been alive. That is enough. That is more than enough. Sleep now. The night is soft and the world is breathing and the spring is all around you, even now, even in the dark, even if there is snow on the ground or rain on the window or only the memory of a warm day weeks ahead. The spring is coming. It is always coming. It is always somewhere here. Let it carry you. Sleep. Sleep. The morning will come gently, the way spring always does. First the sky lightening from black to dark blue to the faintest gray, the stars fatting one by one. Then the first bird, a single note in the silence, tentative and clear, asking the dark if it is ready to end. Then another note. Then another voice, a different song, weaving with the first. And slowly, slowly, the dawn chorus beginning to build until the air is full of it, until the whole world is singing and the light is here. But that is tomorrow. Tonight there is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to fix or plan or remember. The world is in capable hands, the earthworms are working, the roots are growing, the stars are turning, the spring is coming. Everything is in motion, in its right and ancient motion, and you can rest. You can rest. You can rest. Good night, my friend. Good night and welcome to the spring.